Next, we're going to practice solving some compound inequalities so that we can graph them. First, we have negative 2 is less than or equal to 3x minus 8, which is less than or equal to 10. In terms of solving this inequality, you're going to do the exact same thing that you did when you were solving regular inequalities earlier in this lesson, except for that it's almost like you're splitting this up into 3 parts instead of 2 sides of the inequality. And you're still going to use inverse operations. So we're still trying to get this x value by itself, which means we'll still need to add 8, because that's the inverse of subtracting 8. The only difference is instead of adding 8 to 2 sides of an inequality, we're adding it to 3 sections of this compound inequality. That will end up giving us 6 is less than or equal to 3x is less than or equal to 18. Next, the inverse of multiplying by 3 is dividing by 3, so we'll divide all 3 parts by 3, and that will leave us with 2 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 6. Remember that means 2 is less than or equal to x, and x is less than or equal to 6. That's also the same thing as x is greater than or equal to 2, and x is less than or equal to 6. So for our graph, we need the 2 and the 6, as well as something in between and on each side. Remember, we're going to graph them separately. So x is greater than or equal to 2 would look like this. X is less than or equal to 6 would look like this. And if I could take those 2 rays and smush them together, I'm looking for where does red and blue make purple. That would be any place where I have both red and blue. So everything between 2 and 6, including both of them, because those are colored in circles on both ends. So then my final graphical representation would look like this. Most and problems will look like this, where it's shaded in between. Like 99% of the time, you'll have this shaded in between idea here for an and question. Very rarely, you'll get something unusual happen, and here's an example of that. So this is going to be an example of a very uncommon outcome. So here I have the same setup. I'm going to start by solving for x. In this case, I would subtract 2, which would leave me with negative 3 is less than or equal to negative 3x is less than or equal to negative 10. And then I would divide everything by negative 3. Now, don't forget that we divided by a negative, which means I need to flip the inequality signs. And this would be equivalent to 1 is greater than or equal to x, and x is greater than or equal to 3.3 repeating, which is the same thing as this. Alright, so we're going to put 1 and 3 on the number line here. And then let's also do 2 and 4 and 0 and 3.3 repeating. Alright, so again, remember red and blue make purple. So x is less than or equal to 1 would look like this. And x is greater than or equal to 3.3 repeating would look like this. These 2 rays are never going to overlap. There's no place on the number line where I would have red and blue simultaneously. And means where do I have that red and blue together? So in this question, there's no solution. And my final answer would be a blank number line with no shading, because there's no place that they overlap. Again, this is very uncommon. This will happen a very, very small percentage of the time. Most of the time, and questions are going to be where you end up shaded in between 2 points on the number line.